about genetics today. So, what is DNA? DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, is a nucleic acid that carries genetic information. DNA codes for traits, and it's like the blueprint of life. So DNA makes RNA, which codes for proteins, which are coded depending on which alleles of each gene that you get. As you can see here, there's these different bases pairing. So we have adenine and thymine and cytosine and guanine. As you can see here, they only pair with each other. So adenine will always pair with thymine, and cytosine will always pair with guanine. They'll never have like an adenine guanine pairing or cytosine thymine pairing. It doesn't happen. They're also found in the nucleus of the cell. The structure consists of this double helix shape on this side. It's made of nucleotides, which you can see here, which is made up of a sugar, a phosphate, and a base, which are adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine, and that's their base pairs. Each sequence of DNA is unique to each individual, and DNA codes for traits. Chromosomes are structures in cells that hold genes. Pretty much a chromosome is just DNA really tightly coiled, and it makes an X shape. And genes are sections of DNA that code for specific traits. Humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and the amount and sequence vary among species. There's like different kinds of traits like height, eye color, disease risk, and those diseases are like Huntington, cystic fibrosis, sickle cell disease, Tay-Sachs, and it goes on. I'm gonna ask you guys to do like a little pair share moment. If you flip your thing to section 4, you can either write it down, or if you feel comfortable, you guys can talk to a partner about which traits in your family seem to be passed down, and do you think that they're dominant or recessive? Does anybody want to share like thoughts or like you in the front?
I have right here. It's recessive.
Big brain, large brain. Anybody else? Cool. What is genetics? You might want to flip back to the front so you can fill out the vocab stuff. Genetics is the study of genes, genetic variation, and heredity in organisms. Inheritance is the passing of traits genetically transferred from parents to offspring. As you can see here, it is a pedigree, but I just wanted to show you guys like how it can be passed down. So blue eyes is our recessive trait here, and brown eyes is our dominant trait. As you can see here, these set of grandparents, their children all have brown eyes because they all have the dominant trait. But as you can see, if you go further down the line, you can see the recessive trait being expressed because there's potential from this set of parents for one of their kids to have blue eyes, and let's say both of these, since they're both homozygous recessive, which I'll get into in a second, all of their kids have blue eyes. What's the deal with alleles? So as I mentioned just a second ago, homozygous means that it's a gene having two of the same alleles. So for an example, let's say that it's both capitals, which means that they're both dominant, or both lowercase, which means that they're both recessive traits. And heterozygous means that there's two different alleles, so a capital and a lowercase. So Punnett square, a genotype is the genetic makeup of an organism. Phenotype is the observable physical characteristics of an organism. And a Punnett square is a tool to predict how traits will be inherited. So in your worksheet, I think it's on the second page, there's like a little thing that we can fill out here. Do you have a marker? So the done one's on the board, but you can fill one out together. So on the top, we have a heterozygous for the father. Not that it really matters since they're both heterozygous right now, but for future reference, you always want to put the paternal parent on the top and the maternal on the side. here we have homozygous and another, or not homozygous, heterozygous and another heterozygous. And then what we want to do is pretty much distribute them. So this B is going to be passed down to here, and this bottom one. So we'll have a capital B in this square, and a capital B in this square from this one. Next we're going to do this one, just so that we have them set out. Since it's lowercase, we're going to put it to the side, because it's better if you just have the capital on the left side so you can see it just a little bit better. We're also going to be dropping this down to the other square. Now we're going to move to the sides. So we're going to do the same thing, but we just do it to the side. So we have capital B here, capital B here, and then here we have our lowercase b, so we have a lowercase and a lowercase. This is our little Punnett square for, let's say, brown and blue eyes, where our capital letters for brown and our lowercase is for blue. Dominant traits only need one pair of the allele to show, so this one would have brown eyes, this one would have brown eyes, this one would have brown eyes. But since this one's recessive, it needs both of the recessive allele to be present. And then, does anybody like have any idea other than like this one of like which traits are dominant or recessive? You don't have to be right or wrong. It's just yeah, hair color. Darker hair tends to be more dominant than, let's say, a lighter hair color. So I have like a little table of dominant recessive traits. I think it was really cool. I think there is a little circle thing on there. Dominant traits, only one copy of the gene is needed to show the trait. For like brown eyes, dimples, or like a skunk stripe, which I think is really cool. Recessive traits need 2 copies of the gene so that it'll actually show, and those are like blue eyes, attached earlobes, or if you look at this, having a cleft chin is dominant, or having dimples or widow's peak, and as we just discussed earlier, dark hair is dominant while light hair is more recessive. Freckles, eye color, and then the attached earlobes thing, I think that's also really cool. We want to have another pair share moment. It's also, I think, in section 4, which is on that back page. Do you have any of these traits? And think about your family members. Does like your mom or your dad show certain traits that maybe you show, but your other parent doesn't? Or maybe you show a recessive trait while both your parents show like a dominant trait. And a dominant trait doesn't mean that it's better or more common. It's just the genetic makeup. This is one of my favorite like dominant trait, like genetic mutation thing, is polydactylness. Some mutations can be inherited just like other traits. So for example, people that have polydactylness, which is having 6 fingers, this one's showing one where it's like in the center, but sometimes people have 2 thumbs or like an extra pinky. I think it's just super cool because you only see people with like 5 fingers, but that's a recessive trait. And I think it's, I wish that we talked about this more, that it's like a dominant trait. Unique adaptations. Octopuses, they can edit their RNA so they can adapt almost instantly to any environment. So say that you throw an octopus in the Arctic Ocean, it'll just be like, I need to code some different traits, make some different proteins so I can actually exist in this cold weather. And then boom, it's done. It's super cool. But humans don't have RNA editing, but we can show through, like we can influence our gene expression by adaptation. Does anybody want to share like one way that your environment might affect your traits?
So like the weather and how much sun you're in will affect your skin color.
Yeah. Like the sun, like whenever you're out in the sun, you get tan so that you don't burn as easily. But in the winter time, you get more pale. I think there's another one, if not, yeah. So here's a little recap and some takeaways. Genetics is the study of genes, genetic variation, heredity in organisms. DNA codes for traits. Punnett squares predict inheritance. Eye color and dactylness exemplify genetic diversity. I think we are done.